Hey everybody, welcome to another Corporate Underground session. And today we've got Warwick Peel, also known as Wazza. So what can I tell you about Warwick? He was in the US and taught somebody from Led Zeppelin how to do the Melbourne Shuffle. Now, I'd never heard of that, but it's a thing. And not only that, Warwick taught the guy from Led Zeppelin how to do that. Huge DJ fan, loves mountain bikes, loves sport, loves beer with his mates, and huge into really kind of innovation. So Warwick, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Ronan. Where to from here? You want me to tell me a story?
Tell me a story, Warwick. Tell me a story.
What drives you, Warwick?
Yeah.
What drives you?
Yes, good question. Look, I think in when I think about it, I was thinking about this earlier. I was always a delinquent at school. I was always the kid up the back, making lots of noise. And I guess when I finally worked out that business was a place for me where I could, do what I do, and as far as just understand markets and try to, inspire others and be creative and pursue my entrepreneurial pursuits. I was always pretty creative. I guess what drives me is exactly that. It's that entrepreneurial spirit, that creative freedom to change mindsets, to provoke thought, and be the naughty boy. That's who I was, and that's being an entrepreneur, you have to be absolutely nuts, right? Like 87% fail in their first year. So to do that for a decade, bootstrap the entire time across 5 ventures, you have to be a little bit crazy, particularly just to keep going and going and going. So, I think they've just got that inner built determination and a want to be different. So I guess that's what drives me.
One of the... Sorry, you go, Tony.
Thanks, Matt. No, just as someone that I think we've been at the same table at dinner, but we haven't had too much time to chat. But like you talk about entrepreneurship, like if I look you up on LinkedIn, you're a co-founder of a few things in that list, and you're still present at some of them. Like, how are you able to, I guess, like, I don't know how much is chewing up your time where, but how are you able to still be a part of multiple companies? I find that interesting.
Yeah, look, I think it's the new way of the world, right? There's so many people out there with portfolio careers. They're even the sharing economy, the knowledge economy. In terms of my entrepreneurial endeavors, Entrepreneurs&Co was an events business. We still host events, and to that point, there, having done my mind map of my little ecosystem, I always make sure that it involves innovation leaders in business and in government. Then we bring in entrepreneurs. And so to that point, it's about creating, awesome conversations and hopefully inspiring others who attend, but also to connect the dots. And if you're smart about it, then obviously you can, that can be part of your distribution, part of your branding, you go to market. So they're my target customers are business and government innovation leaders, and they're the folks that we typically ask to come on to our events. So I think it's just about, being smart about it. Startup boardroom. Look, that's sort of somewhat laying dormant, but I often talk about innovation governance and asking folks to think about allocating risk capital. And startup boardroom was also about startup governance, right? So these big companies that want to be the disruptor, not the disrupted, they need to set up their own guardrails for those new entities, right? So part of that is thinking about, well, how do we set up the right governance models? How do we set up the right risk appetite within these smaller, agile, nimble companies that were an idea, because we can't let it be strangled by the beast. So, yeah, I just managed to sort of map out my little sort of ecosystem of stuff and and it always links back into innovation, and IdeaScale is the technology platform that that predominantly is my core focus. It's just that the other pieces of the jigsaw puzzle fit in nicely.
So, Matt, Warwick, you had a question?
Yeah, no, basically, my internet's just a bit slow at the moment. I'm playing catch up. But when I first met you, Warwick, you've got a great sense of humour. You know, you very much are the Aussie larrikin, the way that you sort of go about things, and you were off to a football match with your mates and you were going through. But as I've started to get you know, there's a real side to you that holds both. You're both a great dad to young kids. You're trying to change the world as you're going along, and you like nature. You want to get out there and get about. I mean, how do you get that balance? How do you connect all those disparate things? I mean, does each one wash over the next, or is there periods of time that you focus on one more than the other and then go to another? How do you get those changes happening for yourself?
That's a good question, Matt. I mean, I must be honest, the larrikin part of me has always been there. Like I said, I was a smart ass at school. I went to one of Melbourne's best schools, and I got booted out, and I had to re-enroll, and all that sort of jazz. And similarly, I guess I've always tried to, be a larrikin, but not be, and I think part of being humorous, you can get away with, being a bit more of a joker. But then when shit does go wrong, and when we need to have some hard conversations, you can make a joke out of it. But then you can say, no, yes, I was joking, but hey, this is a problem. We're going to fix it, right? Like, yes, and you can joke through it. But I think that's just been part of the way that I've, been able to navigate the business world. I mean, I was in London. I was one of, there was 22 people at this executive search firm for investment banking and funds management, and I was just the random token Aussie that used to, bring that humour to the party when all this crazy mergers and acquisitions and equity markets and all these really sophisticated, mandates were forced upon us. I just sort of brought things back down to earth sometimes, because I think people sometimes take themselves too seriously, and we all need a bit of a laugh, particularly in recent times.
I like the balance of being a larrikin versus just being a dumbass. There's a huge contrast between those two, and people just don't give that. Like, someone just thinks because you can have a sense of humor and enjoy a moment that you can't be serious and very well educated.
Yeah, that's it. And look, I mean, I think I've always sort of, entered into environments where, I'm not the smartest person in the room. So I've had to, use my wit and humor to sometimes get through those types of environments, right? Like, I walked into London having recruited accounts payable staff and warehouse staff, and then the next minute I've convinced people that I know what mergers and acquisitions and equity capital markets are. I had zero idea. I just winged it. I just learnt the language, read CVs, and then just went in and went, oh yeah, M&A, and learned all those 3-letter acronyms and got by, right? So and when you do that early, when you put yourself out there early in your career, you do learn a lot. And I think that's why I say to every young person I know, hey, get out of this little island with 25 million people, go and explore the world, go and work overseas, but most importantly, go and travel, you got to live life, because one day you'll wake up, you'll have kids and all that jazz, and you're constrained, right? Whereas if we go into international markets, we're putting ourselves in uncomfortable positions from day dot. So when I rocked over there with a backpack and not much else, you had and survived 5 years, it really is the heart of school of hard knocks even. There was a bad joke.
So Warwick, clearly you've been able to layer your business. Matt and I kind of talk about this all the time. You can do multiple things as long as they have a core thing that underlines. There's an intersection. There's a Venn diagram. You know, you don't necessarily want to be in marketing and accounting because where's the crossover? There isn't any. So you've been, you know, clearly quite smart in following your passion, almost your passion projects, but they still tie back into your core business. So you're not diluting yourself and fracturing yourself. What advice would you give to people that are looking to do maybe something different than what they're doing now, and how you created maybe those side projects that all kind of tie into yours? Have you got a methodology around that?
I don't really have a methodology around that, except that I do, you know, I've probably got a book here where I just draw, you know, I think you just got to map it all out, right? Like one of the things that I do is like, just, you know, how does this all feed into each other, right? Like there's your central game and then here's your other games and how do they feed into each other, right? So, I mean, that's, you know, 101 ecosystem mapping. But to that point, I think, you know, at some point in your career, whether it's when you're young and that's probably the best time to do it, or, you know, midlife career crisis or whatever it is, at some point you go, oh, what is this all about? I've got to do something that I'm inspired by, right? Like counting beans just does my head in. I don't want to count beans anymore. Right? I want to count beans that are better for nature, or I want to be creative. I want to pursue my music interests and passion. How can I be an accountant in music? Or like at some point you've got to try your best to you know, harness those passions we've got, right? So I think I just along the way, you know, we all come up with ideas, but it's the, you know, the ones that when it's a really good idea, then as someone who's been an entrepreneur for a long time, I know when to back it, right? And as you guys know, you know, I've got an upcoming partnership with, you know, soon to be released Asia Pacific Innovation Institute with Finbar as the lead. IdeaScale will be the foundation partner, and we will go to market to obviously not only teach, you know, applied business innovation to Australia, but hopefully connect the dots for Australia to be a bigger part of the fastest growing economy in the world, which is Asia, right? Where there's less than 9% of our companies are playing in this billion personnel, if not 2 billion population bowl of options, right? There's consumers, there's businesses. Why is only 9% of ASX 200 companies playing in this big Asia game? Like, how can we do that better? That's how we innovate. We explore new markets, right? So when that opportunity presented, I was like, okay, I'm going to back this because I know it's going to win. It's going to be a long game, but it'll win.
But you also built that up with relationships with Finn and Paula and many others that have gone for a long time. I mean, you're a relationship person. That's what you do. There's a craziness about you that is fantastic, and I understands I get that. But you also have an ability to look at things and see what other people can't. Like even when you were a larrikin at school and you got kicked out, I'm sure you got a lot of grief from that from your parents, but there's an undercover where you knew that you'd screwed up and then had to make changes. When does that come in? For most people, they go too far one way or they go too far another way. There's nothing that pulls them back into a center. What was your center? What drives you to be to pull it back together?
I'll be honest, Matt, I have gone too far. I definitely did go too far. I said to funnily enough, this dude who heads up innovation, previously at Telstra, now at AGL, JC, he was just checking in on me because I had, at one stage, I had those 4 companies, right? I had a search firm, Entrepreneurs&Co, startup boardroom, I created something called Future Directors Institute, which was a governance education for next generation. We taught Gen X and millennials how to get into boardrooms and stuff. So I was effectively spinning 4 discs and speaking DJ language. I said to my mate JC, I said, mate, you know, at 1 minute I thought I was a rock star DJ, you know, spinning 4 discs, and the next minute it was a Greek wedding and all the plates smashed. So you know, so I actually
hoppa.
Here we go. And I didn't even get a late night souvlaki. It was so. But I did go too far. I was pushing, you know, everything in different. That they weren't congruent with each other, right? Like I might draw this ecosystem map right now, but back then, you know, mid 2018. Because I'd been an entrepreneur for so long and I'd been taking risks and running hard, I forgot to know when to stop and when to say no to certain things. And you have bust-ups with co-founders, and that happened. I was mentoring a young youth fella. He ended up in jail. Like, lots of stuff happened all at once, and my world blew up.
That's some pretty good mentoring if you can put him in jail. That's
yeah. I mean, that was the thing. I was meant to mentor him to keep him out of jail.
Yeah.
Fail.
But it's great to recognize failure. I mean, what happens with a lot of people though is once they hit failure, they stop and they go back into their shell. I think you learn from failure, absolutely, but a lot of people then don't take the risk again. I know lots of people that had a business 15 years ago and they talk about it like they had it yesterday, and they haven't done business for 15 years. They just stop. So what made you dust your knees off, go and visit this guy with a chisel in your cake and, try and get him out of prison? I don't know what you did, but how did you reassess what was going on? And then what changes did you make?
Yeah, look, I mean, I rang one of my first ever colleagues. I mentioned I was recruiting in warehousing and accounts payable, very basic jobs way back. And I rang her and I said, "Hey, mate, I've had a complete mental health system's gone crash. I need to sit it out for a while and just do a basic job." She's like, "You can come and work on a recruitment desk here and recruit warehouse workers, blah blah blah." And I said, "No, dude. I want to work in the warehouse. I just want to be the average Joe." And so I got up at 5 a.m. Every morning for 4 months and went and worked in a warehouse in Footscray and just packed bale and just graffitied on bales of cotton. I just knew it was time to take a step back. I completely ejected the business world. I ate the humble pie and I just knew that was the best thing for me to do, was just to go back to 101 basics and recalibrate my brain, but also re-energize. I was done. I was toast. So I think, I must admit I loved it. I wore a fluoro kit. There was Maori dudes and all these salt to the earth folk who I worked with every day. Unfortunately, one of the old boys who we used to take the mick out of each other, unfortunately had a heart attack while I was there. So lots of little things happen, but I think you've got to know when to stop, right? As well, right? And that will always be a pretty significant moment in my my career, where I knew, hey, I'm capped out. I've got to do things differently. And then 4 months later, man, I was back in the city and firing on all cylinders, ready to take on new things. And fast forward a couple of years, and now I've got that little rockstar DJ thing is working a little bit better this time, and I get to eat my lamb souvlaki as well.
What would you recommend for people that are on the brink of that? How they identify, and what would you recommend they do if they're about to go down that path you went down?
Yeah, look, I think it's a pretty dark place when you're an entrepreneur and all shit's hit the fan, right? Because you don't have a safety net of a monthly income. You know, you are the business, you are the connector of the dots, and the central source of trust for your customers, etc. Right? So if you're an entrepreneur, you know, sometimes it's better to just swallow that bitter pill and press eject. You know, life will go on. You'll get better. It's happened to heaps of folk. There's a book called I don't know, Startup Pride or Tears of Pride by Jamie Pride, sorry, Startup Tears or something. Like, there's been heaps of folk go through it. The guy that Unlocked, who, you know, got sued by Google and had to shut up shop. Like, there's been some pretty big personalities in entrepreneurs who have taken a step back, and then they come back again. I mean, the Unlocked guy is now going out and suing Google. Like, he's taken them on. And Jamie has created a whole new human-centered design HR OD practice, and he's got like 10 staff in his first 6 months. So, you know, so I think we've all got to know, and this past, you know, 18 months of COVID, you know, there is a huge amount of burnout, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I think if it wasn't for my mountain bike, you know, I smashed out 65 Ks last week, and I smashed out another 15 this morning. I just, you know, if you don't work hard in regards to keeping yourself mentally well, then you are going to, you know, hit the road, hit the wall, shall I say.
Well, we are out of time, so thank you. If anyone that wanted to read that book, I think it's called Unicorn Tears.
Bingo, that's it. It's a cracker. Yeah.
So anyone wants that, that's the name of the book. But Jamie, thank you so much. We'll have you back next week to discuss a topic of passion. And thank you all for listening, and we'll join you all next week. Thanks, guys.